comment on Elena. And tell us a little bit about her stand. It appears as though it may be out of our hands at this point, but give us what you have found out.
Okay, yeah, she's, kind of like the man who would be her boss, President Obama. She's kind of an enigma. She doesn't have a very long paper trail to follow, no bench experience. She's an ivory tower person. She comes from being the dean of Harvard Law School and having a career in academia and government. So that automatically leads to concerns about how a person like this can possibly understand the concerns of those of us who are in flyover America and who deal with things on a daily basis in our daily lives, that she really can have no clue as to what it's about and what we're about and what our concerns are. Be that as it may, we do have a few indicators in terms of where she stands on the Second Amendment. Some of these are within her own words. Others are experiences and things that have been reported. The Washington Post went ahead and published a transcript of the questions and answers that were asked of her when she was up for the position of Solicitor General. And they give an indication of where she stands that's really not too far apart from where we see the existing Supreme Court. For instance, one of the questions that they asked her was, well, what's foreign law going to do in terms of the Second Amendment? And her response to that was essentially, well, based on Heller and based on the rationale that was there, I really see no place in future court decisions for foreign law to enter into that discussion. So that's a good point, in her favor there. When asked whether or not she thought Heller was an appropriate decision or a right decision, she said she didn't think that it was appropriate for her to weigh in on whether or not it was right, but whether or not she thought it was right or not, she was not going to let her personal feelings sway any decision she would make or any ruling she would make from the bench. She wouldn't try to overturn anything based on that. And so that, again, is something that, if you take a look at the current composition of the court and the current composition of most judges, we're not seeing a real radical departure there. She, again, embraces a philosophy that even a supposedly conservative justice like Scalia entered into in the Heller case, that it allows for the so-called reasonable restrictions and things like that, that even though it is an individual right, the belief is that restrictions can go ahead and enter into it. And this is where the existing doctrine starts to trouble those of us who believe in the Second Amendment, in terms of nowhere in the debate do the words "shall not be infringed" ever seem to come into things. And, typically what we get is, well, even the First Amendment isn't absolute, because you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. And I submit that, yes, of course you can. It's just that afterwards there better, darn well be a fire. But the difference there is that there is no prior restraint. You can't, sit me in the theater and put the duct tape over my mouth just in case, I'm going to abuse. I actually have to go ahead and abuse the right before you can then take action. And that's the difference between First Amendment restrictions and Second Amendment restrictions. Kagan also had a part in the Clinton administration. I'm really not that clear. I've read some reports, and she had something to do with gun locks, part of it requiring it on federal agents. I'm not sure what role she had in terms of wider gun lock legislation. And about the most troubling thing that I've seen from her so far, attorney and author David Kopel just released this the other day on a blog called The Volokh Conspiracy, which is Professor Eugene Volokh. He's a Second Amendment scholar and has one of the most widely read legal blogs that are out there. And he is indicating that Kagan had a role in writing the Clinton-era executive order banning the importation of certain semi-automatic rifles. Right. And there was a quote that was disturbing from a Clinton aide, Jose Cerda, who said, "We're taking the law and bending it as far as we can to capture a whole new class of guns." And of course, the whole mantra that they then ran with in the press and that Rahm Emanuel and people like that picked up on is, well, we're banning military weapons. And of course, you and I both know that's nonsense, that these were all semi-automatic firearms that were caught up in this web. And that's, just pretty much, the field that we're dealing with. So right now, I guess I've pretty much brought you up to what I've been able to find out about Kagan, and where we go from here remains to be seen.
So, David, I guess there's no real reason to believe that she would have filled out your questionnaire had you sent it to her.
No, I don't think that most people who don't feel that they have to are going to find it advantageous to put themselves strongly on record for precisely where they stand on the Second Amendment with no equivocation or no wiggle room afforded to them. Again, we're dealing with a person who is rather enigmatic. Her past is kind of shrouded in, it's not really secrecy, it's just that she's been insulated, she's been in the ivory tower, so we really don't know a lot about her personal dealings and about her personal beliefs and things like that. And my biggest concern, again, with people who their entire track record is one of government work and academia, is just the ability to even understand what is in the hearts and minds of just regular Americans like you and me. I'm not certain that that they're equipped to view these things outside the blinders of academia. And one of the points that she brings up, and it's a little bit troubling, because she says, well, after Heller, there's no question that the Second Amendment is an individual right. Well, wait a minute. You're talking about a person, obviously being a lawyer, who takes stare decisis, that is legal precedent, as the only thing to consider, as opposed to the intent of the founders. Now, you and I both know that the Constitution was established with some key points in mind, mainly to secure the blessings of liberty, and that if it doesn't do that, what are we even having a government for? But this rigid after Heller, we know that the Second Amendment guaranteed an individual right before Heller. The fact that she does not acknowledge that is troubling, but again, we're dealing with the Obama administration. Correct. We're dealing with an administration that is inherently hostile to guns, but they are also very, very savvy politically. So that we saw a while back when Eric Holder made the miscalculation of saying, maybe we'd best go after the assault weapons as part of our effort to combat Mexican drug crime. They quickly found him pulled back and retracting that, and the administration disavowing it, and even Nancy Pelosi going so far as to disavow it, because they know that right now it is a third rail issue. They have a lot of other things on their plate, and this is not these are not cards that they want to reveal at this point. So are we likely to get from this administration a better nominee? I tend to doubt it. Sometimes it is what it is, and sometimes things are broke and they can't be fixed. We have an administration that is in power right now that has the ability to bring forth these nominees. We have a legislative structure set up for approving these types of things, and I'm not sure that there's a lot of resolve for a derail Kagan movement. I know a lot of people are moving in that direction, but if not her, then who?
And I think that's the point, David. Considering the nominees that have been chosen, if you look at those, David, do you see a nominee there that would be more prone to its Second Amendment rights? I didn't. Perhaps you did.
No, they haven't nominated you, so there's nobody I can get behind.
Well, if you and I are out of it.
but you probably look very distinguished in black robes, I must say.